We now know a lot more about the case against Donald Trump for his effort to steal the 2020 election, thanks to newly released documents from the Jack Smith investigation. Let's jump into some of the spiciest nuggets here. Apparently, when told by an aide that Vice President Mike Pence was in peril as the rioting on Capitol Hill escalated on January 6th, President Donald J. Trump replied, "So what?" So what? The President of the United States said when he heard that his vice president might die, might be killed by a crowd that he sent there. He says, "So what?" And I throw this out knowing that the MAGA world, upon hearing this, will say, "So what?" It's an ironic world we live in. But anyway, when one of his lawyers told him that his false claims that the election had been marred by widespread fraud would not hold up in court, Mr. Trump responded, "The details don't matter." On a flight with Mr. Trump and his family after the election, an Oval Office assistant heard Mr. Trump say, "It doesn't matter if you won or lost the election, you still have to fight like hell." And to be clear, there's a world in which you can say those words, and it's actually an admirable thing. It doesn't matter if I won or lost the election, I still need to fight like hell for America. But that's not what he meant. He meant he has to fight like hell for himself. Damn the voters, who cares about democracy? I still want to be president. And so that's just some of the highlights that have been revealed from this 165-page brief, which was made available just yesterday by Judge Tanya Chutkan, revealing some of the evidence that was compiled by the special counsel investigating Trump's efforts to steal the election. And there is more. A lot more. There is so much more, but we're not gonna go through all of it. Maybe in past years we would have. We will cover some of the more standout points. But if you want like an exhaustive analysis, there's websites breaking it down and all that. There's simply too much. The main, I guess, through line though, is that this has been reformulated by Jack Smith to comply with the Supreme Court's insane ruling that the president is actually kind of a king, maybe a god, but definitely a king. And so he can do whatever he wants as long as he claims that he's doing it as president. So Jack Smith is now making the case, no, all of this stuff, these were crimes committed by a private citizen as candidate for his own benefit. And so a lot of the evidence is now couched in that language. And let's jump to his overall argument to that effect, saying the defendant asserts that he is immune from prosecution for his criminal scheme to overturn the 2020 presidential election because he claims it entailed official conduct. Not so. Although the defendant was the incumbent president during the charged conspiracies, his scheme was fundamentally a private one. And we will get into some more of the details. And there's stuff that I've never heard before, despite our many times talking about this story. First, though, I want to go to you, Adrian. What do you think about these revelations?
The thing is, with these revelations that Jack Smith has brought us in this filing, it really just confirms who Trump is. And I think we already knew. We've had exhibit A through double Z to figure out how self-serving this man is. But the thing is, that's actually kind of disappointing, is seeing how Jack Smith now has to restructure his arguments to maintain his case to hold Trump accountable for January 6th. And that's a product of having a Supreme Court where we have that heavy right-wing leaning. And as a result, we are seeing these types of opinions that insulate Trump from liability. And it's extremely scary to see our legal system continue to adapt to find ways to protect Donald Trump. And the good thing is that Jack Smith is agile. And so he wrote this brief to pretty much continue to double down on the fact that Trump was acting as a candidate, an individual looking for self-serving ways to continue to stay in power. And I also think that it's a really good point. The thought that Trump didn't take any action in any way to stop January 6th, because by pointing to that, we not only see how terrible he is, but you also can see that he wasn't acting as a president because a president would have stopped it.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of the specific crimes that are detailed that are fascinating, but the stuff that gets to his motivations, I think, that's the most damning. And I think it's the thing or things, I suppose, that's most calling out for like an actual trial. This is the sort of stuff that people should see. Evidence should have been presented in court. Witnesses should have testified. We all should have seen it. Now, in a perfect world, we all should have seen it a year and a half ago. And some of the blame for that not happening, I think, should fall in the lap of the DOJ. Some of it, the various judges and the Supreme Court that have shut down so many of these much needed investigations and trials. But I do want to get to some of that. And so These were not just the efforts of a private citizen. They were, as described in exhaustive detail in the brief, the efforts of a private citizen acting as a candidate who knew that he had lost the election and knew it for months leading up to the violence of January 6th. And one of the ways that they describe this is they describe a meeting where he tried to convince lawmakers from Michigan that he'd actually won. Because again, Michigan is one of the many states that he wanted to set up the fake elector scheme to steal the election in that particular way. So when Michigan lawmakers told Mr. Trump that he had lost the election in Michigan because he had underperformed with, quote, educated females, and that is exactly how in a perfect world it should go. I love it, no notes. Mr. Trump was not pleased. The lawmaker could tell by Mr. Trump's body language, the brief recounts, that he was not happy to hear the assessment. He had slumped shoulders. He was sad. He didn't like it. Not because it was fraudulent. He didn't like it because it didn't benefit him. That's it. And one of the themes that was struck in this briefing was that many of the officials around Donald Trump and Mike Pence in particular repeatedly tried to get him to accept reality and stop trying to steal the election. So there was a private lunch. This is in mid-November, a couple months before January 6th, where Mr. Pence suggested to Mr. Trump that he should accept defeat and run again in the next presidential race. But Mr. Trump did not want to hear about it. I don't know, the brief quotes him as saying, 2024 is so far off. So look, I don't know what justifies a coup, but impatience, I don't think that comes close. I don't think that's good enough. Shredding the Constitution, throwing away a couple centuries of norms because you don't want to have to wait a few more years to give it another go, that really sucks. And again, there's so much more. Like he spoke to Steve Bannon. Look, he says, he's just, but let's go to this graphic 5. Again, to the motivations. He said before the election actually happened, no matter what, we're going to claim victory. Before the winner was even projected, we're just going to say it. And we're going to get everyone ready for this by claiming that the election is going to be stolen. That gets to the motivations. This was not like we had an election and, oh dear God, there was fraud. No, they always knew they were going to do this. They knew this months in advance that they were going to do this. By the way, they're doing this right now for this election too. But also, Trump spoke to Steve Bannon on January 5th. Less than 2 hours later, Bannon goes on his podcast and says all hell is going to break tomorrow. What did Trump say to him? I don't know. I would love to get Steve Bannon to testify, but he refuses to do that. That's why he's in prison right now. And so there's a lot of terrible stuff out there, Adrienne. It sucks so hard that we don't get a trial.
Exactly. I know District Judge Tanya Chutkan isn't really giving a damn about the election calendar and really plans to stay the course. But with the US Supreme Court issuing that king-like opinion in Donald Trump's favor, courtesy of Chief Judge Justice Roberts, it really, really puts us in a position where we're going to have to vote come November without having had this trial. And I think it's really good that we have these briefs come out so that we do have more exposure and knowledge about the evidence against Trump. But at the same time, the question is it really going to make a dent for his believers?
Yeah. I have no faith. I don't know if I had much faith 2 years ago. I have literally negative faith now in that every one of these revelations will just make them love this constant criminal even more. That said, I just want us to get something like justice. And that is not him not winning re-election. That's significant. He definitely shouldn't be president again. There has to be legal consequences. And I say that to say, I know there are some people that are like, they really do see this as a way to solve the Trump problem. I don't see it as a way to solve the Trump problem. I see it as a separate thing from the Trump problem. It's part of it. It's related to it. But if he loses the election, he has to still go on trial. There can't be any looking forward, not looking back. The crimes will not suddenly disappear just because Harris wins. And even if Harris wins and the second attempt to steal the election doesn't succeed, the second January 6th doesn't succeed, and by some miracle she actually gets sworn in and inaugurated, there still has to be a trial. God only knows when it'll happen. God only knows how long it'll be delayed. God only knows which of the many necessary trials will make it to that point because the Supreme Court is going so far above their actual role in trying to protect him, but we still need to have a trial. That's my opinion. I don't know. Feel free to disagree.
Oh, no, I don't disagree. I think we need to have a trial. And the thing that bothers me the most is that it won't necessarily be something that's televised, like we see in Georgia, where their courts allow them to televise what's going on in the courtroom. This is so historic. We couldn't see New York because of New York's rules, but are we going to be able to have full access? Because we need this documented. Trump and his cronies have really upended the legal system and created these new revelations of issues of things that have never happened before in the history of our nation. It needs to be documented so everyone can see.
When you click the join button and become a tier 2 member, you get access to all of our weekly top 10 lists. What are you waiting for?